So if you reach into your pocket right now and pull out your smartphone, how many countries do you think it actually took to build that thing?
I mean, most people would probably guess, like maybe 5 for 10,
Right, yeah, but the real answer is wild. It's almost 200 suppliers spread across 28 different countries.
which is just, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a staggering level of invisible coordination going on right there in your pocket.
Exactly. And today we're doing a deep dive into what actually happens when that coordination shatters. We're unpacking the book How to Win a Trade War by Soumaya Keynes, who is this rather cynical British journalist, and Chad P. Bown, an optimistic American economist.
Yeah, it's essentially a survival guide for this new era where stable trade rules are just, well, dead. And our mission today is to figure out how to navigate all this and minimize your economic wounds in this crazy new normal.
Right. So we'll get into how governments are quietly weaponizing their exports and why economists compare tariffs to a bad party drug, which is fascinating. But let's start with just the extreme fragility of the system itself.
Yeah, the authors illustrate that fragility perfectly. They talk about this Toronto logistics manager, Audrey Ross. So she sources custom makeup, right?
Hmm.
And if she asks North American manufacturers for, like, a custom purple lipstick tube with a specific silver logo, she just gets hit with these massive engineering fees, delays, all this friction.
Oh, wow, really? So it's just a huge hassle locally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when she takes that exact same spec to a manufacturer in China, she gets a simple no problem and a very clear price tag.
Wait, so you're saying a single logistics manager looking for a purple lipstick tube in Toronto kind of exposes this massive underlying threat to the global economy?
Yeah, pretty much.
Because that sounds like the most precarious game of Jenga imaginable. Like
Yeah.
you pull out one tiny block, a specific plastic mold, and the whole Tower of Prosperity wobbles.
I'd actually argue it's even worse than a wobbly tower.
Hmm.
Because in a trade war, governments are, well, they're intentionally kicking the table.
Right, they're not just pulling a block, they're knocking the whole thing over.
Exactly. When they step in to block these established trade routes, they force this sudden supply chain decoupling, which, creates a few quiet winners who benefit from reduced competition, sure, but it generates massive deadweight loss across the board. I mean, the system just completely loses its efficiency.
Okay, so if a government decides to kick the table by, say, slapping a massive tariff on imported goods, how does that actually play out mechanically? Because earlier you mentioned that the authors compare these import barriers to party drugs.
Right, yeah. So politicians get this initial intoxicating rush, maybe a quick bump in local manufacturing or some easy poll numbers, but then the hangover hits.
Ah, right, the hangover.
Yeah, they compare tariffs to marijuana because it completely distorts economic reality. It destroys price signals. Capital gets misallocated because domestic companies are suddenly insulated from real market forces.
Making everything fundamentally slower and, way more expensive.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And import bans. Those are basically the fentanyl of trade policy. They don't just distort reality, they cause a fatal overdose. They instantly freeze supply chains and just halt production entirely.
Okay, so if tariffs are the drug we use to build this artificial wall around our own market, what happens when a country weaponizes what it's sending out to the rest of the world? I mean, that seems significantly harder to control.
It absolutely is. And the authors actually compare export controls to trying to parent a highly rebellious teenager.
Wait, a teenager? How so?
Well, governments try to set curfews or assign chores, basically, by imposing export taxes or requiring special licenses. But keeping that teenager indoors requires this constant, exhausting surveillance.
Because eventually they're just going to climb out the bedroom window?
Precisely. In economic terms, they bypass the rules entirely through black markets, shell companies, or third-country transshipments.
Yeah.
The intended target still gets the restricted technology or the raw materials. They just pay a premium to a middleman.
So the policy just completely backfires.
Yeah, pretty often.
Yeah. Well, if offensive tactics like export controls are that leaky and exhausting, I don't really understand how a country or even a company actually defends itself. What's the alternative? Do you just go total isolationist?
Well, the authors call that isolationist route the Kim Jong-un-friendly approach.
The Kim Jong-un-friendly approach. That's great.
Yeah, it's pure paranoia. You treat every single foreign import as a catastrophic threat and try to manufacture literally everything domestically. But it's an impossible autarky. I mean, even North Korea has to import human hair from China just to make wigs.
Wait, really? North Korea imports hair.
Yeah, so the far more effective strategy is what they call the revenge of the nerds.
Okay, hold on. If you are actively being targeted in a global trade conflict, how is digging into spreadsheets like a nerd going to save your economy?
Because winning isn't about indiscriminately attacking, it's about auditing your own vulnerabilities.
Sure.
The nerd's approach relies on identifying your specific, highly concentrated choke points.
Oh, I see. So you map your supply chain to find the critical microchips or like rare earth metals where your demand is incredibly inelastic.
Exactly. You build a shield around those specific assets before your opponent even realizes they can leverage them against you.
You identify the fatal wound and armor it before the first shot is even fired. And going forward, I mean, doing nothing just isn't an option anymore. Business leaders are going to have to rely on AI and massive data sets to anticipate these shocks as the global market fractures into these competing geopolitical blocks.
And that leads to a much larger, almost existential ripple effect.
Yeah.
Think about the global push for green technology. We need massive amounts of highly specific rare earth minerals for solar panels and EV batteries.
Right, which are mostly imported.
Yeah. If those critical minerals become the primary hostages in the next wave of Revenge of the Nerds trade wars, it isn't just consumer electronics that get delayed. Our entire timeline for fighting climate change could become the ultimate collateral damage.
Man, now there is a terrifying open loop for you to chew on. So for everyone listening, I have a challenge for you. Pick up the closest object to you right now. How many borders did it cross to get into your hands? And what happens to your wallet if a trade war suddenly cuts those borders off? Just keep that in mind the next time you hear a politician make a promise about global trade.